we turn to Anthony Moretti. He's a professor of communication and organisational leadership at Robert Morris University. Anthony, thank you for your time. Let's start off with China. Han Zheng said the country is committed to opening itself wider to the world. What did Han mean by that, and how does China see itself as opening up to the world, so to speak?
I think there are two things. One is the post-COVID message, and what I mean by that is we know, fairly or unfairly, that China was criticized for its zero COVID policy throughout the worst of the pandemic. And as a result, I think this sense of getting back to normal, I think, is one step or one piece of that process. I think on top of that, the other message is, look, whatever this new normal is that the world is that we're dealing with, and whatever political challenges one country or another might see, the reality is if business is being done successfully, openly, legally, and whatnot, I think what you're going to find is all parties agree. And that's consistent with the Chinese message, regardless of the location in which it's delivered.
And Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel was close to a peace deal with Saudi Arabia. How big an impact would that make in the Middle East politics?
I think significant, in part because China will be able to take credit for something that the United States has wanted for so long. And what I mean by that is to make a meaningful inroad into the Middle East. You know, you go back one presidency after another, and they just were not able to get it done. China had the magic formula, and if it comes to pass, much like the Iran-Saudi Arabia deal from earlier this year, you're looking at two very significant international accomplishments for China, especially in a part of the world that has been so vexing for the United States and the West to try to figure out a solution to anything. And China found that breakthrough.
Russia's Sergei Lavrov, meanwhile, lashed out at the US and the West on Saturday as defenders of a fading international order, but he didn't discuss his country's war or conflict in Ukraine. What do you make of that?
I think it was part of a very strange, almost like two ships in the night during the UN General Assembly. And I think we're seeing the fallout from that continuing. And what I mean by that is if you listen to the West, and especially President Joe Biden, there was this consistent drumbeat of, we have to protect democracy. We have to ensure that Ukraine has the arms it needs. We can't give in to, thugs around the world, a phrase that this president particularly likes to use. And on the other hand, you have the global South saying, can we just make the world safer? And can we do something about climate change? And can we see significant and strong development? And on top of that, don't forget that in the G20 meeting about a week or so ago in India, there was a definite attempt to not identify Russia by name. So again, I think an important victory for Russia in terms of what came out of the G20. And I think what Sergei Lavrov is also saying is, look, the world right now does seem to be hopelessly divided north-south. China and other countries are trying to do something about it, while the U.S. seems all the more content with selling weapons here, there, and everywhere.
And Secretary of State Anthony Blinken met on Friday with African leaders in hopes of reversing a coup in Niger. How have African leaders responded to the possibility of a Western or U.S. intervention?
I think there's such a long history there that anything that comes across as something either Western dominated, Western authored, is going to be looked at with a high degree of suspicion. All you have to do is drop the word colonialism and whether it's the United States or one of its Western allies, there is such a bitter history because of that as a result, Anthony Blinken and any Western leader or minister is going to be walking a very fine line, because there is a decade upon decade upon decade distrust. If other nations can fill that void, those nations can certainly benefit from perhaps looking at Africa as less an opportunity to, mine precious minerals and to actually do something to improve the lives of people up and down that entire continent.
All right, Anthony Moretti, Professor of Communications and Organisational Leadership at Robert Morris University. Thanks for your time.